Mercedes M116 and 117 camshaft failures, part 2. I hold in my hand the right side cam from a 1985 Euro 500 SEC. And so if you're the owner of this car and you're watching it, you probably remember when this happened. It wasn't very pleasant. But what we have here is a front cam journal that's welded to the cam. We have a back cam journal that's kind of stuck here. We have another back cam journal that's broken. We have another cam journal right here that is really broken. And then we have one that basically blew its top off, like Mount Krakatoa or Mount St. Helens, depending on how old you are. And so we need to ask ourselves the question, why did this happen? Well, first of all, this is not the kind of failure you get when your cam oiler tubes die, because these guys will still get lubrication. Nope. This is the kind of failure that occurs when there is too much RTV on the rear engine seal plate. And that is really a fascinating thing. And so, you know, because I have the transmission back in the car already, it's going to be hard for me to pull it apart and show you a picture. But I can tell you what goes wrong and what to watch out for. So if you remove the transmission in this car and remove the driven plate, which is like a flywheel, behind it is a plate with like 12 something screws, maybe more, maybe it's 14. And in this plate lives the rear engine seal. But this plate is also an exchange. It's like a traffic exchange. And actually what you have here is a drain. You have a couple of oil passages, the most critical of which goes to the right camshaft in the cylinder head. And you also have a passage that because the passages have to be drilled at funny angles, they needed a closing plate to do this. And so you also have passages that go back to the main bearings and the rod bearings and the oil pump and all the stuff that is really important. And so what Mercedes figured out was that if they made a giant plate to cover up all these passage drillings, it would be a lot easier than coming up with like a insane cross-drilled schematic. And the 117 and 116 engines were the first Mercedes engines to where the rear main seal was actually a radial ring seal instead of a rope type seal. So before that, if you had a 6.3 liter V8 and you needed to change your rear main seal, God help you, the engine had to come out, the crank had to come out. You might as well rebuild the engine just to replace the stupid felt rear seal when it was leaking. And this applies to all the Mercedes diesels and inline 6-cylinder gas engines. They use this felt type rope seal. Maybe it wasn't felt, but it was a very strong rope seal. But the one virtue of the rope seal is it does seem to last a really long time. You might get a little bit of oil leakage, but it lasts ad infinitum. But Mercedes decided to put the radial rear crankshaft seal in this plate that mounts to the back of the engine that also cross-sects a number of oil passages. Now, guess what happens when you need to gasket this plate? Because there's no gasket between the plate and the block. No, Mercedes recommended that you make a chemical gasket, and there are chemical gaskets on the 116 and 117 engines. The most notable example of which is the timing cover in front. When you happen to need to pull this plate, you have to use some kind of silicone or anaerobic sealant. And really, it's most advised that you use a type of anaerobic sealant. Why? Well, because anaerobic sealant only dries when there's no oxygen. So that means the gasket material that gets squished in the plate dries up like it's supposed to, and the stuff that is not squished in remains liquid and gets washed away by the engine oil and diluted, and when you do an oil change later, all the chemicals from that anaerobic sealant go bye-bye as well. But that's not quite the case with RTV, and unfortunately, most shops who don't seem to fully understand the nature of the beast and the fact that there are oil passages back there put RTV on the plate, and they use a lot of it. Now, what happens when the RTV squishes out and dries in the oil passages? I think we should insert the Jaws theme song here or something. Actually, because oil only flows one direction, and that's away from the oil pump, these chunks of RTV break off and end up going through the back of the cylinder head and to the rear right cam journal. The left one does not flow through this interchange, but the right one does. And this oil groove right here, which, you know, you have, let's see if I've got my rear journal here. They all are kind of the same, but the rear one has a little hole in the bottom. Here's the back journal. The back journal has an oil delivery hole in the bottom, and this little hole right here in the middle gets plugged with RTV. And you can see this little hole sort of that's inside the journal, and it's really little. There's another hole here. They made a backup hole. These holes can get plugged with RTV at some point, causing restricted delivery to the rear cam journal and causing the whole thing to explode. Now, if you think that if you've had a cam failure like this, it does not mean your engine is trashed. If your valves aren't bent, pull the cam, throw it away, but you've got to address the underlying problem, which is often RTV on the seal plate. Pull the seal plate, clean it off, flush your oiling system completely. That means pulling the oil pan if you have to. Yes, this can mean a lot of work if you have an SL, but on this car we found chunks of RTV in the oil pan that had drained backwards. Throw the old seal away and put a new seal and clean it off and use anaerobic sealant. One of my subscribers is down here to get his guide rod bushings replaced in his 350 SD. Came down from Jacksonville this morning. God bless him. Anyway, the problem that a lot of people have is that if they over torque the head bolts that hold these cam journals on, their bolt threads can pull out if they have an aluminum block engine. And we don't like that. That's not a good thing. So you want to be careful there. But for the most part, new rockers, new lash pads, a set of valve stem seals, a new cam or a decent used cam with either a new set of cam supports or a used set of cam supports. By the way, these are a matched set. You can't change them individually. They have to come as a set. Once you change all that stuff and deal with the RTV on the seal plate, you won't have this issue again, but you need to get all of the RTV or silicone out. So that's why silicone is bad and should not be used in your rear seal plates on your 116 or 117 engine. Doesn't matter which version you have, it's all the same. So anyway, if you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. Please, what else do I want you guys to do? Comment below if this has happened to you. Also, it's a good idea to inspect your camshaft, even if you have, you know, on the mechanical valve cars, 75 and earlier, everybody who is adjusting their valves inspected the camshaft, but people don't adjust their valves either because they get lazy. On these cars, people don't. They'll go for 100,000 miles, valve cover will never come off. So I suggest doing that occasionally. Anyway, leave your comment below. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, and we will see you in our next highly informative and unique Mercedes-Benz video. Enjoy keeping your Mercedes-Benz from blowing apart.